The year is 2016. I've been doing the hobby for roughly a year and a half at this point, and I'd practically given up on ever completing a proper army in favor of focusing on my painting. Thus far, I had only ever really used Games Workshop products, only somewhat considering trying out Army Painter or Vallejo. 40k was the driving factor of what got me into painting, and for the first time in a while I found a YouTube channel that I really enjoyed watching. Warhammer TV, or as it's now known as just Warhammer. Back then was around the time that Duncan Rhodes was officially brought onto the Warhammer team. GW was seemingly going through a renaissance. They would upload tons of videos of Duncan presenting new paints like the technical series and the dry paints. But one video in particular really caught my eye. The Citadel Artificer Tint Set. As Duncan explained, this product was basically a set of paint pigments in ultra-small Citadel pots. The idea was to mix these pigments into pre-existing paint pots, well, to tint the paints to the artist's liking. Duncan's example was a rather strong pitch for the set, as he took a pot of Ironbreaker and mixed it into a rather strong blue-tinted metal to make a perfect non-airbrushed paint for 30k Alpha Legion. To say this piqued my interest is an understatement. That week I went to my local game store to pick up the set, but unfortunately GW hadn't shipped any of the boxes in. I was told I'd have to wait a little longer. The next few times I stopped by, I saw it on the shelves, but some other products would catch my interest in the interim, and I never ended up getting the set. What was weird to me is I never saw or heard anyone talk about this product since then. All these years later, I'd think from time to time that I had some weird, absurd Mandela effect memory. But sure enough, all the original videos about this product are still up on YouTube. And the weird thing is all of them are from the same year of the product's release. So, what happened? Let's get into it. The Artificer Tint Set was released in November of 2016 and was actively sold roughly half a year before it was abruptly and very quietly discontinued. Quietly in the sense that if Games Workshop takes a product off the shelves in an empty portion of the hobby store, did it ever really happen at all? In my inner circle of painting friends, very few of them even know this product ever existed. But the ones that do had some really good, potent information on it. According to the chitter chatters, the reason this thing was so abruptly taken off shelves is it didn't sell well. In fact, it sold horribly. It sold so badly that apparently 2016 White Scar outsold the entire set during its original test. The product wasn't only a flop, however, it was absurdly expensive to manufacture. At the time, the paint pigment market had grown substantially and the demand for paint pigments were at an all-time high. As you can probably guess, a product consisting entirely of paint pigment sold at 50 bucks a pop wasn't exactly making GW a lot of money. I'd like to think that this product was sold at a bare minimum profit to production value, but knowing GW, I don't know. They sell their plastic like it's frickin' platinum. The last major hurdle this product had was that contrast paints were already well into production. It's weird to me to think that about 8 years ago contrast paints were an idea. Hell, it's weird to me that contrast paints have been out for about 5 years now. I feel kinda old. Damn. Anyway, back on topic. So it's pretty obvious at this point that this product had literally everything going against it since it was released. So that kind of begs the question, was it any good? Let's see.
All right, gentlemen.
For the video, I actually managed to get my hands on this thing relatively easy. Being that nobody seems to remember this thing, the demand varies. I actually got this cheaper than the original production value. My first impression so far is that I really miss this art direction for GW products. Mini tangent, but these box designs are so cool. I know it's a good chunk of nostalgia talking, but come on. This has so much more character compared to the watered-down Citadel color design we have now. It's an art company for Cry-Eye. I feel like valuing the cool art is something they should do, but it's GW, so I can't be too shocked. So, opening up this bad boy, we're greeted to 10 mini paint pots and 3 Citadel terrain stick things. I already used one of these, so having extra is pretty neato. Each paint pot is named after the Primarchs, which is pretty cool until you notice that they named the dark red one Ferrus Manus, and the purple one Magnus the fucking Red. You know what, all those other reasons I mentioned pale in comparison as to why this product failed. There's a purple Primarch to begin with, why didn't you... Okay, I'm sorry, I'll stop. So one thing I noticed right away, and I was actually quite worried about this before the product arrived, is the white and the yellow pigment pots were really, really dry. And yes, these are supposed to be a little wet to begin with, it's not a powder. Thankfully, a friend of mine guided me on fixing these things up using a little bit of airbrush thinner and some Lamian medium. I'll give you guys a good look at each pot, however. First we have Lorgar, a very rich burgundy color. I'm really intrigued by this one. Next we have Horus, and it's just black. Definitely something cool we could do there, but it's not exactly the most interesting. It's in good shape though. Here we have Ferrus Manus, which is kind of a rich orangey color. Very different. Not exactly something that I was expecting. It's not in the best shape, but it's definitely fixable. Also, the name is really stupid. Here we have Vulcan, and it's not the green I was expecting, it's almost a jade color. Very interesting. Here we have Sanguinius, and that is the most red I have ever seen. I am excited for this one. Here we have Magnus the Red, and it's that dark purple. Despite the name, I'm really curious to see how this one works. Conrad Kurz is definitely my most anticipated color of the set, especially for that Alpha Legion color. But I feel like I have a couple other ideas that I really want to try with this. Perturabo is one that I don't even remember existing. Not that I had much information on this kit to begin with, but I think it looks really cool. It's very dark ochre. I showed it earlier, so I don't feel like I really need to give it any other introduction, but Jagged Icon is just white. Kind of a surprising color to add for a pigment, but I'm curious to see what I can pull with it. The final color of the set is Rogel Dorn, and this is a neon yellow. I have an assistant for this video that wishes to be unnamed, but we experimented on this set together. Their idea for Rogel Dorn was to use it to help blend Necron greens, and I think that would look really cool. I then began fiddling around with the set, taking multiple colors from GW's line and combining them with the pigments on my wet palette. So these are just some of the paints we're going to be using for this experiment. The first one we'll be testing is using Jokero Orange. Citadel's oranges are very pale in my opinion. I don't mind them, I think they're good for fatigues, but not much else. As you can see, I'm going to be using a little bit of Rogel Dorn, and I'm being kind of generous with the application. A little goes a very long way with pigment. But the thing is extra pigment means that this color that's already a base color will be even stronger than it once was. Having the ability to make something like Evil Sun Scarlet have the same consistency as Mephiston Red could be really interesting. So we're slowly mixing this into the Jokero Orange, and as you can see, it's a much lighter and very vibrant, almost sun yellowish orange. Very pretty color. Here we've got my little Reaper Bones buddy, and he's going to be our test subject for all these colors. I'm going to be slowly applying this to his little tabard, and as you can see, it's a very interesting color. But more importantly, I want to show just how much this pigment affects the color. I really didn't apply all that much to the orange, and we've got this color and it's very strong. Huh. This looks like a craft single. Sorry about that, I had to entertain myself while editing. Anyway, here you can see me playing around with more colors, and here I'm introducing the Rogel Dorn to some Waystone Green. For how much I blend my colors, I can actually see myself using this set a lot. I'll get into more of this later, but one of the big criticisms of this set is a lot of people at the time just didn't know what to do with it. When I first got this set, I just wanted to play around with the colors a little bit, so here I'm just using a bunch of different colors and just kind of mixing them with the pigments. There's some interesting results, but I don't think I really want to go into each individual one, as I kind of want to do a follow-up video on more in-depth experimentation. Mixing some Vallejo Model Color Black with the Conrad Kurz was a very surprising result. A big positive that I stated previously is just how strong the colors come out while using this. I prefer a paint with stronger consistency over one that's too weak that I have to use multiple times. Not that I mind layering, but I really don't like doing more than 2 thin coats to get an opaque finish. Here I'm just mixing in some Mephiston Red with the Sanguinius, and even thinned down, it is just, look at how one coat, that's just one coat, Jesus. The final color I want to talk about in this brief little introduction to the set is this amazing burgundy color I managed to pull off mixing some Conrad Kurz with the Sanguinius and Mephiston Red. The finish it leaves after 2 coats is amazing. As you can see here, it's just something that you can't really get from Citadel by itself. Not that I dislike Citadel's burgundy color to begin with, it just doesn't have the same color depth. Here you can see the color while it's drying, but it's really cool to see the reds really settle into the recesses while the blues really showcase on the edges. I gotta say, it's really fun to play around with this kit. But for as much fun as I had playing around with it, now we're gonna do something a little bit more constructive. I had mentioned earlier that contrast paints are a big factor in why this product was so quickly scrapped. So I figured, hey, we have pigment here, why not mix it with some contrast medium? The results are kind of mixed. I don't know. There's something else that I'd like to try later on, but we'll save that for the next video. Again, I'm using the Lorgar, and I'm sorry, I really like this burgundy color. I know there are other factors beyond how contrast paints work, but I figured this would be a good experiment. The contrast medium with pure pigment had to do something, right? My little Tyranid friend here will be our little example for these kinds of shades, as having a lot of extra details will be key. As you can see right away after application, this is very, very strong. I'd slowly thin it throughout my application just to see a little variation. As you can see on the other side of his head, I thinned it down a lot, but man does this look good. It settles really nicely in the recesses, but also colors the broad areas very effectively. I also thinned it down more for his legs, and this is almost a more magenta-y Magos purple. I really don't want to get your hopes up because this looks good now, but the way it finished is The side with more pigment dried pretty good. The side with less pigment, however, dried very, very chalky. And even the side that had more pigment had a very chalky finish to it. Not ideal. And if you have the same curiosity I had, yes, I did try applying this by itself just using a little water to thin it down. It's kinda weird. It's definitely fun to apply, but just because it's fun to apply doesn't mean it's gonna dry well. I already kinda showed you what it looks like already, but I figured I'd show you the process to begin with. It is interesting how the pigments mix together on the carapace, however. For the hell of it, I decided to mix in a little Rogaldorn with Imperial Fist, just to see what I could get. Again, the application is really weird. It leaves this chalky finish that just doesn't work for me. I suppose it would have been smarter to thin it down with a little bit of contrast medium to mix it together better. I think they're kinda dumb, but maybe a proper paint shaker would be good for this. Though of the colors that I tested, the yellow did perform pretty good. But as you can see, a lot of the finishes end up being very patchy and chalky. It's just not something I'm particularly fond of. This is definitely something I want to toy around with off camera, and I'll bring back more results in the next video. The next part I want to get into is the metallics, and this is where I think these paints really, really shine. I started with Retributor armor and I mixed it with some of Sanguinius. I figured I'd go for something similar to the Thousand Suns Red. It's not quite Thousand Suns Red, and we'd obviously have to do more work to get to that color, but I'm kinda going for something instantaneous. Obviously, Duncan's example for Alpha Legion colors was impeccable. I did manage to make a color similar to it because I don't have Iron Breaker. I ended up using a little bit of Vallejo Game Color Silver Metallic for this. Also, by mixing more pigment to the metallic, I made an amazing Ultramarines blue. Imagine seeing this on Rabute Gilliman. A big thing to remember while applying this is to really make sure that the pigments are mixed well with the paints. After one coat, this color doesn't look nearly as impressive, but I'm sure if I mixed it twice and applied it a second time, it would look amazing. As a final test for the video, I wanted to mix some of the purple in with my metallic. The method I wanted to use was the classic method of sticking it into the actual pot itself and mixing it around, and for this I used an Army Painter bottle. I quickly realized that this results in a damn mess. Even in the original video where Duncan is actually doing this, you can see that his fingers are coated in paint. Usually I like to give Citadel shit for their little pots instead of using bottles, but somehow the pots are better suited for this. I then ultimately decided to just use this as a highlight color. It's very lightly tinted with the purple, and it's still a very bright metallic. I figured a very nice purple metallic was fitting to a Drukhari character, so that's exactly what I did. And over this black undercoat, I can't imagine painting Drukhari in any other color. Thus far, this is by far my favorite of the metallics. I really like how this applies. I decided to go a little further with it too, and this is something that I did do on camera. Though at the same time, even before shading and highlighting, you can't tell me that this doesn't look awesome. I'm sure there are other methods that you could use to pull this kind of color, but this is just so easy. Though, bearing in mind, the Artificer Tint Set isn't exactly available to everyone. For the first coat, I mixed Magnus the Red with Army Painter Gunmetal Metallic. I really liked how the black shined through, but I kinda wanted to take it further. The next coat I would apply is Vallejo Game Color Metallic Silver. This I used more so with the purple to kind of spread out the color and sort of brighten it up. I didn't really do this towards the edges as I kind of wanted the lower sides to be more transparent, but over time I would kind of just fiddle around with it. I definitely want to paint my entire Drukhari kill team like this. As you can see, the Vallejo color makes a much more pearly finish, and I really dig this. The most fun I've had so far is playing with the metallics, if you can't tell. To really drive home the purple tone, I decided to shade using Druki Violet. I just kind of went over the entirety of the model. I did water the shade down, however. It's about 50-50 with water. I think pure Druki Violet would actually do a disservice to the purple. Once the shade dried, I highlighted using my mixture from earlier that I put in the bottle. The very bright metallic mixed with just a touch of purple was just perfect. The slight purple hue really kept the silver from overwhelming the entire model. Well, after a good amount of little testing, I think it's about time that we give a verdict on this product. So after owning this product for about a week, and kind of digesting and thinking about it, myself and my partner have pretty much reached the exact same conclusion every other person on YouTube has when reviewing this product, and it's that we aren't really sure what to do with it. Obviously, I've shown you a lot of methods that are good for this thing. The metallics are cool, changing some of the colors are cool, but the base idea of taking these tints and mixing with pre-existing pots just isn't viable. It's a cool idea at its core, but I feel like this is something that would be good for someone who doesn't really want to buy more paint. At the same time, though, I don't know if the commitment to getting specific colors with this set seems like something I'd want to do all the time. Plus, if I wanted to use this in my painting tutorials, all of about 15 people around the world would be able to follow along. It's not useless, however. I can see myself using this quite often for personal models and just to play around with. I understand why this thing didn't do well, and with all the videos that do exist of this product, all the artists basically have made the same points as I have. It's cool to toy around with, and it's handy to have if there's a highlight color you need but don't have on hand. But it's really not an essential kit even if you are really serious about your painting, so I don't know. It's a cool chemistry kit. And I'd figured I'd mention too, these little sticker things that come with the kit, they're like indicators on the pots on how many scoops of the pigment you've used. Kind of a cute idea. I don't know. I like that they have individual names for each pot, so that's nice. Above all and personally, I think this kit is kinda neat. I'd like to see it make a comeback. Not something I'm necessarily dying for, but I think it'd be fun for other people to play around with. Miniature painting is undeniably bigger than it was 7 years ago, so maybe this thing would do better now. I'm sure there's more cool ideas that I could come up with for the next video, but I really want to know what you guys think. I would love to see what kind of ideas you can come up with, any sort of challenges that I could use for it. Hell, maybe some of you guys that comment may have used this thing before and you might have some cool ideas. I'd love to hear it. Same with discontinued miniature painting products, anything Citadel related, Vallejo, anything. If you got an idea, shout it out. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, I think it's about time we wrap up this video. I really appreciate it if you stuck to the end. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you liked what you see. And make sure to mishmash, kit bash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.